therapists. Our focus in these episodes is to humanize the athlete experience beyond the lines of their arena. In this podcast, we will explore the whole athlete, highlighting the mental, emotional, and social aspects of their journey.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Millennium Counseling Center podcast. My name is Lyda Robinson, and I am one of the interns at Millennium. For this episode, we're doing a little special interview with one of our other interns, Natalie Miller. It's going to be kind of like an introductory thing for her, share, why she chose Millennium, her background, and stuff like that. And I'm really excited to hear what she has to say. Just some backstory on Natalie. She is currently an intern at Millennium Counseling Center with a bachelor's in psychology, art therapy, studio arts, and a minor in photography. She is currently pursuing her master's degree in clinical mental health counseling from DePaul University. So welcome in, Natalie. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me.
Of course, yeah. So this is a very casual conversation we're about to have right now. Basically, I really just want to know, first of all, why did you choose Millennium Counseling Center as your internship site?
Basically, I chose Millennium because of the podcast.
Okay.
It was the thing that kind of put it over the edge compared to some of the other places. I listened to some of the podcasts and what some of the people were saying, and the idea of working alongside of these people and getting to know them was really intriguing to me.
Okay.
So,
did anybody specifically stand out to you in terms of like conversations or podcast episodes?
I remember listening to Devona, Derek. I remember even listening to Hillary's. Of course, Oren in his introduction, at the beginning.
Welcome to the Millennium Center podcast.
Yes, exactly. So all of it. And then just the content there was also really great. And I thought this was a great platform to share mental health conversations and education.
Totally. Yeah, I have to say, when I first started looking at my internships too, I realized they had the podcast. I was like, this is really cool. Mm-hmm. So here we are now, full circle moment. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about, your journey as, where you got your bachelor's, kind of how that transitioned into the world of counseling and kind of where you are today. You can start from the beginning, wherever you want to go. We'll flow with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I played a lot of sports growing up, and so I ended up getting a scholarship for volleyball to a private liberal arts school, and I had a lot of opportunities to try out for a lot of different teams, but I didn't pursue them in time, and so when it came time to actually do the tryouts, there was just a few schools left, and so I landed myself at a very interesting school up in Lake Forest that had a big theater program, a big dance program, a lot of history majors. It was just a different kind of atmosphere. And so I discovered the psychology program. I'm not even really sure. I think perhaps I even just talked to a counselor there that might have advised it. But it was very natural to me. I understand people. I understand, let's just say it just came very natural.
Sure.
So I was doing very well in the coursework, and I also really enjoyed it. It's just was a natural thing for me. I was also very much into the creative arts and creative endeavors.
Okay.
So just working with the program, I saw that we had an art therapy part, and that I was able to kind of blend some of my studio arts classes and my photography with the psychology. And that's kind of how it started.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. When in terms of, do you feel like when you were in school and doing the classes for like art therapy and stuff, was that something that was therapeutic for you?
100%.
Okay.
So yes, there's that backstory too, right? Not unlike many people who end up in this field, there was a desire to understand myself more.
Sure.
And so these studies most certainly did. And so I graduated with my undergraduate degree quite a long time ago in 2001. So art therapy was new. It was very new.
Yeah.
And some of the teachers I had were exquisite. And so we most certainly did some different art therapy journeys, and even expressive arts therapy was probably my most interesting class in college.
Okay.
With the professor. And we were working in this building that was built in the 1850s,
Wow.
all wood walls, all wood floors. And, talking about it, I can imagine doing some of the first projects in that room then. And it most certainly helped me to work on my identity and the various things that I was processing as a 17-year-old in college.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's really cool. I like the idea that you've kind of see how art therapy has kind of transformed over the years too. Do you feel like you were one of the very I wonder when art therapy kind of became a thing in schools, like when it became well known, because it is very well known now. It's a form we use at Millennium. We integrate art therapy in various clients. But I want to kind of go back to your, we talked about it a little bit before the podcast about your experience as an athlete as well and how that kind of got you through school, because we obviously at Millennium, we have the athlete wellness division. And so Natalie does have a history in being an athlete. So talk to a little bit about that, of kind of how your experience as being an athlete and having various coaches that kind of helped you get through these various stages of your life of being very vulnerable and young in the college world.
Structure, having people look out for you, in a sea of people where you're off on your own and you don't have, parents overseeing you, and, you had accountability, and it created routine, and the peers that I had would help me, help me develop better life skills.
Sure.
So that part was very helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what were some of those transferable skills that you feel like you got when you were playing versus that you've carried on to now moving forward?
Oh, everything. I so much so that I push, not that I push it, but I really encourage my son to play in sports as well, because the developmental aspect of it, having a coach that you can rely on that is almost a parental figure, is super important. Yeah, I lost my train of thought. So
that's okay. No, that's good. I like that. I wanted to kind of go through too about, you said you went to school, what was it, 2001 when you went to college? And so you're just now pursuing your master's. So what is that like for you? What changed in the course of, you mentioned too, you were a photographer for 12 or 20 years. So what was that flip for you of career change that you really wanted to go back to school and get your master's in counseling?
Well, so I think I remember where I was going with the question that you had before of how, the sports kind of transfers into life. And my life as a photographer, I worked and still do on very large productions on a national scale.
Wow.
And so
that's impressive.
Yeah, it was a good time. I was in a lot of amazing spaces with a lot of very, very cool things and amazing design elements. But being a part of a team and knowing how to operate with a team, knowing how to interact with different people, knowing how to be able to approach, the quote unquote most important person in the room, the CEO, but also knowing how to speak with the people behind the scenes, the people sweeping the floors, the people building the sets.
And those can be some of the most important people, or those in the background.
Oh, they were. If I did not get labor on my side, I would not have been able to accomplish the jobs, because quite literally I would need to, get up on ladders and get up into lifts. And those were the people that would help me and actually were the ones helping me navigate that. So being a part of a team in that kind of a nature, I didn't always work with the same people. So I would, show up on site day of opening after the accounts people and everyone had been planning for probably an entire year. So it was very important to know how to fit into what was going on there.
Yeah.
And so I think athletics and being a part of teams really helped me know how to navigate that world, very much so. So, I am at, a midlife point currently, and, COVID hit in 2020. And so when that happened, a lot of the large scale jobs that I was working on were put on pause. And at that point, I then realized, to my disbelief that I was non-essential. I was sort of sidelined, put on the bench, so to speak. That was not a comfortable place for me. I also started seeing that a lot of people were working from home. And although I did spend a lot of time working from home editing, the actual nature of my job was very, very physical. It required, lifting heavy equipment and climbing ladders and getting on airplanes and,
a lot of movement,
a lot of steps in a day. And so that part also has played in and I don't know if that's 100% my own thoughts or if it's like a societal thing. Like, how long can I be top of game in this industry as a female, as an aging female?
Absolutely.
So I did start to consider that, like, with that blow, I started to feel a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it's not just random or happenstance that counseling was what I picked back up, because I never put it down. I graduated, at a young age, 21, and I didn't necessarily conduct research, but I have never stopped learning. I've never stopped paying attention to my mental health. It's always been something that I've had to pay attention to. And, so I was always looking for new tools. I was always looking to learn more. And when I did find myself in different settings, different therapeutic settings, I would often feel like, boy, I know just as much as the person who's guiding me.
Okay.
And that would happen a lot. And so I think it just came around that point when COVID happened, where it was like, okay, this is the time to go back. I had always intended to go back. I didn't think it would take this long, but I did always have this vision of being an older person who had life experience who would come back to the field.
Sure. Okay. That's incredible. Do you think that obviously COVID and being such an uncertain time, do you think you would have switched your career had it been if COVID didn't happen? Or do you think that was a big reason why you kind of decided to flip? It changed like your whole perspective of kind of the industry and photography and stuff too. Do you think that was a big factor?
It was the impetus for the change.
Okay, gotcha.
100%.
Okay.
Yeah, because it was always on the back burner, but we can always put things off another day, right?
Right.
So, and applying for graduate school really requires planning ahead.
Oh yeah.
And throughout my 20s, I don't know that I planned much ahead. I was very, very spontaneous and able to...
like many 20-year-olds.
Yeah, I was able to, always land on my feet, but I don't know that I had a lot of foresight. And so the process of planning for graduate school required that. And so it was the time, and I applied, and I actually applied on the last day of when they were closing the program. So I applied on August 15th, and the applications closed on August 15th, and I started school in September.
Wow.
So
okay.
it was...
you were a bit of a late bloomer, but we got it. You got here.
I got
here
in.
We are.
I got in, and it couldn't feel any more right. I mean, It absolutely feels like the right time.
When I think it's incredible to see too of how like there's so many people, especially at Millennium, the counselors, like Derek Bilsma was on the same boat as you. He was an athlete. He went through all these things. He was a businessman. He pursued his career for all this time, and then he decided he wanted to switch it. And so I think it goes to show that there's not really a timeline in terms of when you want to kind of switch a career and do something different, as long as it feels right. And so that's so cool. Your story is unique to you, and I think a lot of people would resonate with that, because some people may feel stuck in their careers. They may feel like something's better for them. So in terms of like, what would you say to somebody who's kind of resonating with this story for like your story? What would you tell them in terms of like what do you think the advice you wish you would have gotten in this transitional period of your life?
Well, it might sound sort of cliche, but like where we are, we're meant to be.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because in my 20s, I would, traveled to China, I traveled to Brazil.
Wow.
I very last minute with not a lot of funds and not a lot of planning. But I always, every trip, I took a lot in my 20s. I traveled quite a bit. But I always treated it like I was on assignment, like I was working for National Geographic, even though I wasn't. And lo and behold, that shaped my experiences and successes in my 30s when I started working for some very well-known brands and traveling on that capacity. Had I not done what I did in my 20s, I would not have been able to handle my career that emerged in my late 20s, early 30s at the capacity that it did.
Mm-hmm.
I would have been overwhelmed. I would have been overwhelmed by traveling to all these new cities that I had never seen. I wouldn't have known how to navigate it, but I was able to because I had all those experiences. So I think, that aspect kind of shows that it worked out, but I don't really know that I knew that it would work out like
right.
it did.
I mean, how do you know? When you're in the thick of it at such a young age too, like you don't know what's the 20, 30-year plan. So that's really cool.
But I think I followed my passion.
Okay.
And that was it. And so I guess I don't know what advice I wish someone would have given me, but I know what advice that I give. And that is to be true to what it is for you. And so for me, I chose photography because I perceive the world with my eyes. And that is my sense that allows me to take most of it in. And that's what I navigate it with. So, I was drawn to it and I just followed through with what I was drawn to. But photography is also very much a human field, right? If I'm going to take someone's picture, I need to learn how to get through to this person and I need to learn how to disarm them, how to make them comfortable, how to bring out the best in them. And so a lot of those skills really are counseling skills.
That's what I was just going to say. That sounds really transferable of like in the counseling space with clients, like making them feel like they can be authentically themselves. And that's through photography too. Like you want them to be comfortable when you're taking pictures of them. And wow, that's really cool that you kind of put that together. Wow.
Yeah. And also, a lot of people don't like seeing their pictures right away.
Right.
So there's the psychology of that. For a while, I did work at a studio for a pretty famous photographer in Chicago. And, people would just, when they saw their picture right away. And I would always have to kind of talk them through that.
Yeah.
Like, trust me, you'll love this picture in a couple years. So we're hard on ourselves, I think, sometimes.
No, totally.
Yeah.
Well, what an incredible story that you have. I'm just so honored to be kind of in this conversation with you and getting to know you a little bit more. And these are things that I didn't even know about. And so I love the analogy you used with, like, do you think that in your work now at Millennium, do you think you integrate a lot of your skills in art therapy into your clients and photography? Like, do you feel like you can tie the two together a lot in your work?
100%.
Wow.
Yeah. The life experience has been very, very helpful in helping to build rapport because I worked in all industries and quite literally and all echelons, so I really have some tidbit or a lot of tidbits of relatability on a lot of different levels. And yeah, just the art therapy, I think that the photography saved me, and that was my art. It gave me purpose. It allowed me to continue to travel. So in many ways, my photography was my art therapy. It was what allowed me to live the life that I wanted to be living. And I'm a creative, so, just through and through. So I'm always looking for ways to incorporate what the person's sensory experience is into the session. So if I find somebody is, more visual, then I'll incorporate more visual stuff. If I find out somebody's, struggling with having anxiety or a lot of nervous system dysregulation, then I can tap into, my yoga practice, which I've been practicing yoga for over 20 years. And so I can kind of tap into those practices. So I kind of I put on different hats based on
you
who
have to, right?
who I'm working with. Yeah.
Okay. That's the next question I was going to ask is like, what are some of your specialties you think you align with in the therapeutic space working with clients?
So I think that the body is a huge resource.
Mm-hmm.
And as much as we're in the nature of talk therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's, very cognitive, I truly know from my own experience, with my journey with yoga, which really helps you to understand the nature of your mind and also how to control your body, right?
Yeah.
You can do something incredibly difficult and your heart might start pounding and you might be getting all these signals.
Sure.
But in yoga, you learn to breathe through that, not to react to it. And so my specialties are very much incorporating all of the senses and the body. And so lately I've been really fascinated with polyvagal, and it's just kind of a fancy word that really ties so many concepts together. In essence, our bodies really do have sensory signals, and 80% of these signals get sent to the brain.
Wow.
And so
I didn't even know that.
sometimes,
Wow.
it's wild. The more that I'm learning, it's really fascinating. And so, sometimes I don't even know if we even realize that we're dysregulated and that our body and that our nervous system is really what's not feeling right. And so I think there are some absolute wonderful strategies to get through cognitively, but I also think incorporating the way that the body is feeling and helping the body to calm down or helping the mind to be comfortable with the signals that the body is sending and, and realizing that it's kind of bidirectional, that you can calm your body down, but that your body can also calm your mind down is really the thing that I'm most interested in tapping into.
Okay.
Yeah. And also trauma work. I'm very interested in trauma and addiction work because I do think that addiction is the Band-Aid that a lot of people, kind of put on to help themselves cope with intense feelings in the body that are too uncomfortable to handle. And so then they, acquire these addictive tendencies to kind of suppress that overwhelm.
Yep, totally. No, we see that do you see that a lot within your clinical work with clients so far of like addiction and trauma? Do you kind of see the patterns with your clients specifically?
I mean, I think so. I think that's what I'm seeing. I think that, again, I think that a lot of the addictive stuff starts out as tendencies to want to cope. Yeah, even working with people that kind of get into the wrong or an unhealthy lifestyle or, life of, street stuff or, sometimes they end up in these situations because they're looking for connection. They're looking for belonging, so I'm always kind of looking for the reason or the layers underneath what's showing up.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. No, I'm learning a lot listening to you right now. I'm like soaking it all in like a sponge. That's really cool.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad you took the time to do this. I wouldn't be sitting here and I was so nervous about doing this, but thank you for...
Yeah, of course. No, I think getting different perspectives from different therapists is so important. I think this podcast really utilizes that. So I appreciate you kind of being open and honest about your experiences and kind of how you got here. And we're happy to have you at Millennium. So
thanks so much.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah.
Thank you.